I am writing these words in hopes of finding some release from the nightmares that have haunted me since last July. My name is Mark, I am 32 years old, and I have spent my entire life traversing the rugged wilderness of Utah. I am not a man easily shaken, but the events of those 4 days have fundamentally altered my perception of reality. The journey began on July 14th alongside my two closest friends, Sarah and Rob, both veteran campers. The plan was a simple 4-day loop deep into the high Uintas wilderness. The weather was hot, the sky was a piercing blue, and everything seemed perfect. After 7 miles of hiking, we reached a natural basin nestled beneath a series of jagged limestone ridges. It was here that I noticed the first sign of the anomaly: the silence. In this elevation during July, the wilderness should be a symphony of insects, the wind whistling through the pines and the calls of mountain birds. But this place was hollow. It felt as if the atmosphere itself had been drained of sound. Even the squirrels and marmots were gone. We ate dinner in a heavy, oppressive hush and retreated to our tents early, not because of exhaustion, but to escape the weight of that eerie stillness. At 2:15 a.m., I was jolted awake by the sound of footsteps circling our tents. These weren't heavy thuds of a bear, nor the delicate prancing of a deer. They were the steps of a bipedal creature, but the rhythm was wrong. It sounded as if something was mimicking a human gait, but didn't understand how to distribute its body weight. I heard the fabric of Sarah's tent brush against something. I whispered her name, but she didn't answer. Rob asked in a trembling voice if it was me walking. When I said no, the footsteps stopped instantly. They didn't fade away, they simply froze. We waited for dawn in terror, and when we finally emerged, there wasn't a single track on the dry ground. The next day, the horror deepened. We found a mule deer carcass, but it wasn't eaten by any predator. There was no blood, no claw marks. The deer had been folded in an impossible geometric fashion. Its spine was snapped in several places so that its hind legs were tucked behind its ears. More chillingly, its fur had been plucked in perfect, uniform circles, exposing the pale, bruised skin beneath. On the second night, the mimicry began. As we sat by the fire, a voice drifted from the absolute darkness of the tree line. It was Sarah's voice, identical in every way, but delivered in a flat, emotionless tone. "Hey guys, look at this." Blood turned to ice in our veins, because the real Sarah was sitting right next to me, her face pale as death. Rob shined his flashlight toward the trees, and we saw 2 eyes, dull orange, not reflecting light like an animal's, but seemingly absorbing it. They were 7 feet off the ground, unblinking, before they slowly receded into the shadows. We decided to flee the next morning, but the wilderness was not finished with us. At a creek, while Sarah and I were checking the map, I looked up to see Rob standing on the opposite bank, waving at us. He was wearing the same clothes, the same pack. But I looked down, and the real Rob was still kneeling beside me, filling his water bottle. The Rob on the other bank wasn't waving his hand. He was swinging his entire arm from the shoulder socket like a pendulum, his mouth wide open in a perfect frozen circle. When the real Rob screamed, the entity dropped onto all fours, its bones making a sound like dry wood snapping, and vanished into the brush with impossible speed. On the final night, trapped in a shallow cave, the entity began to mimic my voice. It repeated a very private conversation I'd had with Sarah years ago about my father's funeral. It repeated the words with increasing speed until the voice morphed into a high-pitched shriek. Then it began to thud against the roof of the cave. Rob saw a hand with 7 fingers covered in mangled gray fur reaching around the ledge toward us. We reached the truck at dawn, and as I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw it standing at the edge of the woods. It wasn't a wolf, nor a man. It was a tall, skeletal frame draped in the hides of different animals sewn together, wearing a human face that looked like a failed clay sculpture of Rob's features. Now, months later, I still hear a tapping on my second-story window. 3 slow taps, followed by a voice that sounds like mine, whispering my name. It didn't just want to kill us, it was training to become us. I am a forest ranger, and I used to mock the stories of skinwalkers or shapeshifters. I no longer do. I am writing this as an unofficial report because the official ones will categorize what happened as a disappearance or a radio malfunction. But those of us who work the deep backcountry know that silence isn't just the absence of noise. It's the sound of something holding its breath, watching you. I was on a rotation in a remote area with a seasonal partner named Tyler. The station was just a small cabin, a radio tower, and miles of dirt roads separating us from civilization. It started with a radio call about a man in a brown jacket waving at cars at mile 7. When we went to investigate, we found nothing. No car, no footprints, just a silhouette Tyler glimpsed for a second before the light hit it, and it vanished like a mirage. The next night, another report came in. The caller said something chilling. He's smiling, but he isn't carrying a flashlight. It's like he's waiting for someone. We went to the site and found tracks this time, bare footprints crossing the road. The toes were unnaturally long, and the stride was too wide for any human to achieve without sprinting, yet the impressions were deep and heavy. As we examined them, my own radio, clipped to my vest, clicked on. I heard my own voice. "Station 3 to dispatch, radio check?" I looked at my hands. I wasn't touching the button. The entity was speaking through me. We returned to the cabin, terrified. In the middle of the night, the radio turned on by itself. A whispering, distorted voice said, "Help me, I'm cold." When I asked for identification, the voice shifted into a warped version of mine. "Station 3, please open the door." Tyler looked out the window. Under the yellow glow of the porch light, he saw something at the edge of the dark. Long, spindly legs, a narrow, hunched torso, and a head that looked like a deer's at first, but when it turned, it had a human mouth, stretched into a wide, agonizingly artificial grin. The entity spoke again through the radio, using my cheerful, official tone. "Tyler, can you come out for a second? I need help with the generator." Then came the knocking. It wasn't violent, it was polite, rhythmic, and patient. The knock of a neighbor wanting to borrow a tool, while my voice whispered from the outside, "Open up." I pulled my sidearm and shouted a threat. The response froze my blood. The entity laughed, like air passing through dry pipes, and then spoke in Tyler's voice. "Come on, man, don't be like that." The porch light blew out, and we heard the sound of a heavy body pressing itself against the window glass, testing the strength of the barrier between us. In the morning, we found a clean brown jacket hanging from a tree. In its pocket was a map of the station with a red circle around our location and the words, "Open the door," written in bold. Tyler resigned and left, but I stayed. A month later, the new ranger called me from that station, hysterical. He said there was a man outside knocking and asking to be let in, using a voice that sounded exactly like mine. What I am about to tell you happened in the Gila wilderness of New Mexico. I went there seeking solitude with my childhood friend, Cal. We were well prepared, maps, GPS, and an in-reach satellite communicator. On the first night, I woke to a voice calling my name. It wasn't a scary whisper, but a normal, familiar tone, using the nickname only Cal uses for me. "Hey, come here a minute." I thought Cal had stepped out to relieve himself, but then I heard Cal snoring right next to me in the tent. The voice came from the other side of the creek. "It's cold. Come help me." It was the tone of someone asking for a small favor, which made it even more terrifying. It wasn't trying to scare me. It was trying to lure me. The next day, we found bare, wet footprints on the sand, fresh. Who walks barefoot in this rocky terrain? When I pulled out the inReach to send a "we are okay" message to my wife, I found a draft message I hadn't written. Come to the water. I felt a chill run down my spine and deleted it immediately. The strangeness escalated. We found a small pile of objects neatly stacked, a food wrapper, a piece of duct tape, and on top, my plastic spork. I knew it was mine because the tip was slightly melted. I checked my bag. The spork was missing. Someone had been stealing our things and rearranging them just to let us know they were there. On the second night, the horror hit a new peak. We were in the upper camp when we heard voices from the dark. This time, it was my wife's voice, soft and affectionate. "Are you coming? You said you'd help me." Then she laughed, a laugh that sounded like hers, but with a gravelly coughing undertone. Then more voices joined in, a child, an old man, a woman crying. It was as if the entity was flipping through radio stations, searching for the frequency that would break us. We fled in the middle of the night. As we scrambled through the brush, our headlamps failed simultaneously and the GPS died. We took cover behind some rocks and heard a counting sound. Tap, tap, tap. Silence. Tap, tap, tap. Then someone rolled a stone that stopped exactly at our feet. At dawn, we found bare footprints that led directly to our hiding spot and simply stopped, as if the entity had been standing right over us, watching us shiver. On our way out, we passed our first campsite and we froze. We found 2 tents pitched in the exact same spot as before, same color, same size. In the middle was a backpack that looked just like Cal's. We didn't get close, but I saw a piece of paper fluttering on the pack with my own handwriting on it. The entity had created a duplicate of our entire camp. When we reached the car, we met the sheriff and a search party looking for a missing hiker. When I told him what we saw, he didn't look surprised. He leaned in and said, "There are things out here that can use your voice, your face, and your loved ones. Never answer them." I went home thinking it was over, but 3 nights ago, I was in the kitchen at 2 a.m. I heard my wife's voice from the living room. "Hey, come here, I need you." It was a perfect imitation. I almost went until I heard my real wife cough in her sleep from the bedroom at the end of the hall. The voice in the living room stopped instantly, like a radio being cut off. The entity didn't stay in the forest. It followed me home, and it has learned where I live.